Hi guys, welcome back to Solo Club. Firstly, welcome back to me to the UK. I've just noticed that my angle is way off here. This is horrible. I almost want to fix it because it looks. Oh dear, what am I gonna do? We'll forget this kind of skew if thing. Um, but yeah, well, welcome back to the channel. I've been off for a couple of weeks in terms of creating, doing these live streams on Solo Club because it's been so incredibly busy. But also, as I was about to say before I started rambling on about this desk, I'm back in the UK after what was it, 5 or 6 days, I think, in the United States. Basically, I went to New York for it's a bunch of things, but the first thing was the main reason I was there was for a conference. It was for and I hate this word, but it was for an influencer conference, and that was fantastic. Learned an awful lot there, some of which I'm going to talk about today. And the second reason I was there was just to basically visit that city because it's been on my bucket list for a long, long time, and finally I had an excuse to get out there and check it out. And me being me, while I was out there, I obviously made some videos as well because that's what I do. So the first one was the MacBook Air review, the 15-inch MacBook Air review. That went live on Tuesday, I think, or Wednesday, and no, it was Monday, wasn't it? And then, then I've done another. Well, it's not ready yet, but it's a kind of follow up review of the Apple Watch Ultra. I'm editing that at the moment, and that's looking pretty good, to be honest. So that should be live next week at some stage. But thank you for joining me on this stream, if you are, and if you're joining me in the future when it's been recorded and published as a regular video, welcome on board. If you get a chance, check out the Substack link below to my newsletter. Every Friday, I send out a newsletter to people who want to find out about more behind the scenes stuff about being a YouTuber and being a solopreneur and all that sort of stuff. So all one of us, yeah, at the moment, there's two people, Rob. So I've got two people on the stream. Hi, Rob, podcast co-host, and someone else. I never know when to do these streams. I have varying degrees of success in terms of the timing of these and how many people jump on. I did one on a Saturday about 3 weeks ago, and it was really popular. So I'm trying to do the same again now. Hasn't quite worked yet, but doesn't matter. Who cares? So this might be a slightly shorter stream than normal, simply because I've got lots to do following the trip to New York. But the thing that I wanted to talk about, excuse me. The thing I wanted to talk about today was what I see as being take a step back. So the influencer, I hate that word, sorry, but the influencer conference that I went to, High Luxury, another regular, was all about, as you guess, it's all about the process of brands and agencies working with people like myself for, sponsor integrations and all that kind of thing. And it was absolutely fascinating, real eye opener. I haven't really processed it all yet because there was a lot of information to take in. I've got lots of notes that I need to work my way through, but it was really, really insightful. The kind of main takeaway that I came away with from that conference. I'll have to have a drink. Bear with me 2 seconds. I'm still slightly ill as well. I'm much better than I was on the last stream, but yeah, not doing brilliant at the moment. But I'm getting there definitely. So so basically the one takeaway, or the main takeaway that I had, is that the relationship between brands and creators, let's call us creators rather than influencers, is completely broken. It's not terrible insofar as we're always falling out and we're enemies, but it is the process behind it and the way that these partnerships are struck up and then managed and then potentially carried on or not carried on is just all over the place. And I've always wondered if that was the case, because since I started working with brands for this business, I've just been amazed by how manual everything is and how disorganized people are, and including myself sometimes, absolutely. But also how little there seems to be, how little kind of process there is built into it, and budgeting and strategic development, and it's all very. It just seems all to be very haphazard. Is probably the best way of doing it. There are some edge cases for this, so you do get some really, really on it brands who know exactly what they want. They involve you as soon as they can, much earlier in the process, which I'll come on to in a moment, and they know what they're doing basically, and they have a very strong, strong set of KPIs they want to hit, a very clear strategy that they're very open about and transparent about with myself, and those kind of partnerships work really well. And I've got 2 or 3 of those that have been ongoing for the last 3 years, and they work brilliantly. But most of them, nothing against the brands, I think it's just the industry are just, like I say, a bit disorganized. There was one guy at this show, which his name completely escapes me, I'm afraid. So apologies, he won't be watching this, but he pointed out that the typical way that a brand partnership works is that the brand basically looks for a bunch of influencers or creators, for a product sponsorship. They shortlist a few, they pick 2 or 3 they want to work with. They then send the product, obviously agree a contract. The video gets made, the video gets published, and the brand just sits there and waits for sales. That's it basically. If you condense it even more, it's look for creators, send them products, wait for sales. It's as bare bones as that, and as unstrategic as that. And as this guy pointed out, that doesn't work. It doesn't. It may produce a few sales, but it's not enough to drive meaningful return on investment for that type of marketing, which is what this is. We are part of the marketing machine with this, and if they're doing it that way, it's not working. His point with this is that creators should be brought in much earlier in the process. So rather than being brought in right at the end when the brand has thought, right, we need to, we've done our pay-per-click advertising, we've done this, that, and the other, we now need to get some people talking about it on YouTube. Rather than doing that right at the end, bring the creators in not right at the start, obviously, but very early on in the process of developing that campaign, which makes total sense. And it's one of those things, it's a bit of a light bulb moment when you think, with hindsight, yeah, why don't they do that? That's never happened to me. I've only ever been brought in right at the end of that process, that bit when they're kind of looking for some additional sales through a creator partnership. And the way that would work in terms of coming in earlier, we're not expecting to be sat in their product development meetings, but when they get to the stage of, although having said that, it may even be at the point of concept. So if I've been working with a brand for a little while and they've got an idea for a new, let's say, iPhone case, but they want to get some feedback, they want to get some insight from the people who might buy it and the people who might review it. At that point, if we're brought in, they get two amazing things with that. They get our input, which is useful because we try a lot of these things. So I try a lot of iPhone cases as an example, but equally they get access to our audience as well. So you might be aware that on YouTube, there's a thing called the community tab. And on there, you can put on polls and you can ask questions, you can post videos, you can post photos, you can do anything you want with it, really. But it's a great way of asking your audience stuff. You can say, I use it all the time for video ideas. So I'll say, look, I'm reviewing this thing has arrived. What do you want to know about it? And I always get some fantastic feedback from that. And a lot of my videos have been built around those community posts or the answers that I get to them. So you can imagine if a brand came in really early, said, look, we want to update this iPhone case. We've got an idea for the second revision of it, but we'd love to get some feedback on what we should be doing, what people think is missing from existing iPhone cases. Can we ask your audience? Brilliant, because at that stage I could do a poll for them. I could just ask the audience a question on the community tab and then give them this real feedback, this genuine, useful feedback. And the idea with that is that they'd be bringing me in at that stage, or another creator, as a consultant, really. And apparently this is happening more increasingly now. So a lot of brands are bringing in creators very early on as consultants to consult on the process for building a product or reiterating a product, etc., which I think is just brilliant. And like I mentioned a moment ago, it's that with hindsight, it's 2020 vision, obviously, but it just makes an awful lot of sense. I really can't stop looking at this wonky table. I can't move it because if I move it, I'm going to knock over the camera. But yeah, if you, I know Rob will be bothered about this, but that's really annoying me. Anyway, so that was the key takeaway from that show. which is that the partnership between brands and creators needs to be much more cohesive, I suppose, for want of a better non-David Brent term. I love the idea of this consultancy, and obviously the idea with this is for the creator to be paid for this. You know, that brand is gaining access to the audience. They're gaining access to the creator's knowledge, to their access and influence. And the key thing with this is that as the creator, you've built a rapport with your audience, and also your audience trusts you. So rather than that brand going out and doing a poll or some kind of market research to a random group of people, they can say to someone who's actually got an audience that trusts them, can you ask them some questions about this product? I love that idea, and that's something that I'm really going to kind of try and build into the partnership process that I have with brands going forward. I think it's a really smart move. The other thing is to ask brands how, or basically ask for the results from each campaign, and you'd be amazed by how little this happens. So if I, again, using an iPhone case as an example, if I do a sponsor integration with an iPhone case manufacturer, and I publish the video, it's got the link in there for the people to go and check out the case and hopefully buy it. I very rarely ever hear back on the number of referrals I've sent across, the number of excuse me, the number of sales. The only time I do see that is if there's an affiliate program in place. So those links are tracked and I get a kickback for that. But it's a manual process, and it's something that I have to go and do myself. I have to be proactive in going and checking out those numbers. The brand isn't proactive in coming back to me with them, and they should be, because we need to know how successful these campaigns are being. The reason for that is simple. If they work, then that campaign should continue, that partnership continue. If I send 200 clicks across to the iPhone case manufacturer and they convert 90% of them, then that has worked, and we need to do another integration. But you'd be surprised, like I say, how little that happens. Equally, if it hasn't worked, so if I've sent across those 200 clicks and only 10 people buy the case, what went wrong? Was it my approach to the integration read? Was it the process of going from the YouTube video to the website? Was there something wrong there? Was there something wrong within the website's customer journey that didn't quite work? Was the offer not good enough? Again, we should be talking to each other about this. The brand and the creator should link up afterwards and talk about it. And again, you'd be very surprised at how little that happens. The thing that does happen occasionally is that you'll be asked to send statistics from the YouTube video later on, say 3 weeks later. The brand or the agency will request some stats. You send them, and then you hear nothing unless you proactively follow up. So it's on me as well. So I haven't been doing that. I haven't been proactively following these things up, and clearly I should. So I'm definitely be doing that. What else can I tell you about this? This conference was so detailed, and like I said, I've got so many notes that it's hard to condense my thoughts into anything more digestible. And also, I'm massively, I was going to say hungover, that's the wrong word. I'm massively jet lagged still. I literally got back in the UK yesterday. It was one of those flights where you leave the US at, I think it was 10 o'clock in the evening, and then you get back to the UK at 10 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, you've had about 2 or 3 hours sleep on the flight. I'm a new dad, so I'm used to a lack of sleep, but yeah, typical kind of jet lag. So I'm a little bit all over the place. But once I've kind of got back into my normal frame of mind and I'm with it a bit more, I'll be sort of digging back into those notes. I do think there'll be a lot of stuff I can draw out of that for these live streams, because I think it's very, very interesting. Interestingly, one thing I do want to mention is that I don't know if they're on this video on this live stream, but I had one person on Twitter who replied to a photo that I took of the conference, saying, "Oh dear, I'm not sure I'm keen on this. This is all a bit too." I can't remember what the exact words were, so I won't put words in their mouth. But it was along the lines of, "Oh, influencer conference. I'm not sure. I don't like the sound of that. It's all a bit too." Not mechanic, but it's all a bit too close to the bone for me. I'm not keen on this, Mark. And I had to kind of reply and say, well, yeah, firstly, swap the word influencer for creator, as I have been doing on this video, because that's a much nicer word than, I don't like the word influencer. Most of us don't, on YouTube. So if you swap it for creator, that sounds a bit better, creator marketing influence, marketing show. But then, regardless of that, the net result is the same. We are, as I mentioned earlier, we are part of a marketing thing. Influencer marketing, I have to use that word, is a huge industry. It's a huge sector within marketing. It's been growing. I think it's one of the fastest growing marketing segments of the last few years. It shows no signs of slowing whatsoever, which is great for me, obviously. But we are, behind all the videos that we make that are all kind of great and talking about these products that people love, we are actually, it's very mechanical. I think this is what this guy had a little bit of a problem with, which I totally understand. But it's when you start peeling back these layers that you realize that we are part of a machine. We're part of a much bigger machine, which is to help people sell their products. And that isn't always the case when it's a non-sponsored video. So if I'm just reviewing, an iPhone, for instance, and that video isn't sponsored, which these days is rare, but if that is the case, I do still do some non-sponsored videos. That isn't quite the same because there's no ad within that video. Although having said that, there will be some AdSense, Google, YouTube ads on there. So you could argue that we're still selling something indirectly. But certainly when I'm doing a sponsor integration or definitely a full-on dedicated video, I'm acting as part of the marketing team for that product and for that brand, which I've never made any bones about. This is a business that I'm running. I just find it interesting that when you start to peel back these layers and show people what's going on, some people do find it a bit uncomfortable. But I suppose to be completely blunt about this, we're not just doing this for a laugh. People like some people do. Some people do run YouTube channels just as a hobby, and that's brilliant. For me, though, it's a business. If I don't do these things, I can't pay the mortgage. I can't put food on the table at home. So it's very much a business, and I've always found it fascinating. Even before I came into this myself, I found it incredibly interesting. And I know that, I'm guessing people who come onto this live stream and people who watch this video in the future and who have been subscribing to Solo Club find it incredibly interesting. And I still find it fascinating. I still don't quite understand how it all works, to be completely honest, because it's just crazy. But I just found that interesting that people do sometimes have an issue with the mechanics of this business and the fact that we are actually selling products. If you pull everything back, that's exactly what we're doing. The key thing with it is to do it, do it with transparently and pick products to promote and work with that you like. And I've made mistakes with that in the past. Hands up, I've picked incorrect brands to work with by mistake, complete with the lack of research and that sort of thing. So hands up, and I do occasionally still make mistakes now, but that's a learning process. But there's always a strive to work with brands that you genuinely like and you genuinely, whose products you genuinely use. So that was that really. I'm not sure what else I can kind of go into from the conference. I want to take some questions as always. In fact, let's just go on to questions because, like I said, I've not got a huge amount of time today. I've got to crack on with this edit from last week and do another video, some BRoll and stuff. So it's a bit of a crazy morning. It's afternoon now, isn't it? Let's take some questions, guys. We've got a few more on the live stream now. So thank you everyone for joining us. Let's go for it. Rob's just commented on the jaunty angle. I'm sitting in a corner rocking as a result of the jaunty angle table. Yeah, I think I've got this right. I think that's roughly. I'm one of these geeks who watches TV programs and movies and things and looks at the framing, and it always amazes me how perfect and how level everything is. If the next thing that you watch on TV, if there's a straight line somewhere, whether it be horizontal or vertical, if it's a pillar for a big building or just like that, the kind of the meeting of the wall and the ceiling, look how perfectly level it is with the frame. This is a crime. I've ruined it with this because the table, I assume, is skew-if. Doesn't help that this lens is also a bit distorted at a wide angle. But yeah, this is horrible. And this is here forever now. I can't get rid of this because this video will go live it's on live now, but it will become a normal YouTube video forever. So this will be, sorry, Rob, I'm just as annoyed about it as you. I just can't sit here rocking because that would look weird. Right, let's bring on some comments. Andy, I would say that if the viewer is clicking to go to the website when you've done your job, and it's probably more to do with the brand's website that's preventing a sale. Yeah, that's a big thing, Andy. I mean, that's a big pet peeve of mine because I do come from that background. So I come from a marketing background. I've spent many years and lost a lot of my hair working on campaigns and websites and funnels and things that kind of make that is the right term, actually, make people buy stuff. And if that process doesn't work, if I do a really good sponsor integration where I talk naturally about the product and I'm genuinely love it and I think it's fantastic, and say, look, click that link in the description to find out more. They click the link and they end up on a horrendous website which perhaps doesn't work on their iPhone. They can't press the buttons, or they're tiny, or it does work on the iPhone, but then when you press the button to go to the product, they're hit with a form with a million different fields in it. And if that happens, they've ruined you may as well not have done that sponsor integration, because people will not sit there and do that. One of the best examples of how to do it properly, and this video isn't sponsored by them, I should say that, is Paperlike. If you look at any of my Paperlike integrations, they work unbelievably well. Paperlike sells a Paperlike screen protector via my channel pretty much every day. And if you look at the way, once you click the link, the way they've built the customer journey is just spot on. So they're kind of the gold standard for it, really, and the results prove that as well. But you're completely right, Andy. It's not always down. It's not, if something fails with this, it's not always the brand's fault. It might be my fault for picking the wrong product. It might not be right for my audience. I may have got things wrong in the read. That does happen occasionally, but more often than not, this is the problem. Right, Rob, let's get Rob on. Will you be going to the London one too, following your positive experience in New York? Yeah, so the influencer marketing show is in London as well, which I genuinely didn't know when I booked it. My girlfriend doesn't believe this, but I booked the New York trip and then realized that the exact same show is in London, which is an hour and a half away. But anyway, so I think that's in October. I'm tempted. Although having said that, I think when I last looked, I don't think they had the agenda on there, and I didn't know if it was going to be the exact same people, which wouldn't make sense. If it's a different bunch of people, it does make sense. So possibly I'll have a look. Well, I'm going to London, funnily enough, at the end of next week on Friday to review the Sony Xperia 1 5. I hate Sony product names, but yeah, I'm going to be taking that phone to London to do some tests with it. Paolo, hello. Cup with no lid on the desk. Bad, Mark. Yeah, I know. I assume you're referring to the fact that I could easily knock this over and destroy all of this expensive equipment. I very much could. I do have a habit of doing that, but thankfully not hitting expensive equipment with it. But yeah, there you go. Joe, fixed table tilt in post. That would be tricky. The problem with that is, let me just remove your comment. If I did that, if I leveled it up, which you can do, obviously, this then would be out of, because I can't just, well, I could take part of the frame and then do some kind of masking or something. It would be horrendous, Joe. I'm just going to leave it here, actually. And what I might do, I might make this a thing, because that's another thing with YouTube. Something I've thought about a lot recently is people who put, or YouTubers who put, who kind of purposefully put mistakes into their videos, so that they'll mispronounce something, or they'll show something. If they're showing a screenshot of their desktop, they'll have a folder on the desktop that says something like, secret Trump files or something, just to get people commenting in the comment section, which is great obviously for the algorithm. This might become a thing. People might say, "Oh, look, he's still got that wonky desk. He doesn't clearly doesn't care about composition." I might just keep it like that, partly because it'll keep Rob rocking to himself in the corner of the room, which is quite funny. Any more questions, guys? Come on, just hit me with anything. Joe says, "Sun's out." Sun is out, actually. It's nice and sunny in the UK. It was boiling hot in the US, in New York. New York seems to have very similar weather to us at this time of the year. I know it gets much colder there in the winter, but certainly it felt very much like a hot summer in the UK, in New York, and it also poured down with rain at one point, which was again very much like the UK in the summer. So I felt a bit home from home when it came to the weather. Kevin's calling in from Lakeland, Florida. I love Florida. Not been there for many years, but I want to go back there at some stage. Come on, guys, let's have some questions. While I'm waiting for a question to come, ask me anything. I don't mind. It's the weekend. Who cares? It doesn't even have to be about YouTube. Let's just ask me anything you like. You can't embarrass me. I'm tired as well, so you may get a weird, funny answer. No, you won't get a funny answer, but you might get a strange answer, which is something to laugh at yourselves. What am I talking? I'm really jet lagged. I'm really tired. I have no idea what I'm talking about. Hopefully this video has made sense up to this point. But yeah, come on, ask me a question. Anything. Could be literally about any topic you want. I don't want to end it yet because normally I normally go on for about 50 minutes, which I probably won't for this one. But come on, hit me with a question. No. Oh dear. This is yeah. Well, I could ask myself a question, couldn't I? Is there anything else I can tell you about New York? Oh, car horns. That was interesting. I met a couple of people while I was out there. Two things. I'll come on to the car horns in a moment. So I met while I was out there 2 people from the Medium Academy. So I met Josh, who is based in Philadelphia, but he very kindly got the Amtrak and came over to have a coffee with me. And joining us was Neil. Neil lives in New York, or just outside, and he was part of the Medium Academy. Works in an Apple store, although he doesn't at the moment because he's kind of recovering from a problem with his ankle. I'm sure he won't mind me saying that. But it was lovely. It was so nice to meet those people in real life. That was great. But the reason I mentioned them is because I was talking to them about the car horns in New York, and literally every half a second, someone hits the car horn. And when you hear that, when you're a British person, when you hear that, you immediately look around and think, have they crashed? Has someone walked out into the road? Has someone cut someone up really badly? What's happened? Nothing's happened at all. It's just in New York, and Neil was explaining to me, it's just you just kind of go like that. You just kind of give them a little toot just to let them know that they're in the way, or someone's stepped into the road, or people are taking a bit too long to go forward. Just a little. It's not angry. It's just a little. In the UK, it's angry. If you hit your horn, you are furious with someone. Apparently not in New York. I found that really interesting. Here we go. Some questions. As I was padding, Paolo, what was Cat's Deli worth a stop? Oh wow. Yeah, so if you're not aware, Cat's Deli, I think most people are, but Cat's Deli is this very, very old traditional sandwich shop, basically in New York, featured in When Harry Met Sally and lots of other films, although it's most famous for When Harry Met Sally, because it's the scene when she's having a very nice time in the coffee shop in the sandwich shop. You know which thing I mean. And there's a little thing where they sat, the table, there's like a thing pointing down, so you can sit on that table if you can. You'd be very lucky to do that because it's absolutely packed. But basically you go in, and very well organized because it's so busy. But they give you a ticket as you go in, and then you kind of line up, kind of heading towards what they call cutters, who are these guys who basically take these great big pieces of meat and chop them up and put them into a sandwich for you. You can have all sorts of stuff, but the thing to have is the pastrami on rye. I had that with mustard, which I don't know if that's a crime or not, but I fancied some mustard with it. And I had fries, and I had pickles, and it was one of the biggest meals, one of the biggest lunches I've ever had. But it was just stunning. And while they're chopping it all, while they're cutting up the meat for you, they give you a couple of bits to try out. It was just stunning, amazing, mouth-wateringly good. Recommended to me as well by Patrick Rambles. He's a big fan of Katz's. So if you do go to New York, check out Katz's. I spoke to a couple of people from New York after that, and they both said it is really good. And being New Yorkers, they said, there's a lot of places that aren't quite as good, but have got a name for whatever reason, and people go there. But Katz's genuinely lives up to it, and it really did. So that was great. I ate a lot of food. Very expensive though. Those sandwiches were $25 plus tax. A lot of money for a sandwich, even though it's huge. Right, Joe. Here we go. I have a big question. How to build and keep discipline in the world of content creation. I'm not a creator, but rather a freelance editor for different brands. I find staying on task difficult. How to stay on task. I've never really had a problem with this, to be honest, Joe. I suppose it comes down to two things, doesn't it? I suppose if you're easily distracted by life's distractions, whether it be your phone or the TV or family or whatever it might be, or if you're distracted by other tasks. So if you start something and then you think, oh, I've got to do that, and that's more important, or that's easier, I'll stop doing this. And I just focus on the one thing and stick with it. So, for instance, the edit that I'm doing at the moment is the review of this watch in New York City. I'm just on that now, so that I'm not going to edit another video until that's done. I've had to break to do this, obviously, but this is a bit different. But I will just sit down and just get into it. It's discipline. I mean, you've used that word there yourself, Joe. I think if you're a freelancer, you'll know this. If what you're doing is directly linked to money coming into your bank account to pay for rent of your workplace and your home or whatever it might be, food, that for me that's always been enough motivation. When I've worked for other people in the past, when I've had like normal jobs, I've struggled with that occasionally. It's much easier to kind of turn your attention to other things and perhaps take your foot off the gas a little bit when you know that your paycheck's coming in. But when that's not the case, I've never had an issue with it. I've just knuckled down. So I think the key thing, Joe, is just stick with one task and don't finish it. Don't go on to something else until you finish it, because if there's one thing I've learned is that you can only do so much. And I always think if there's a task that I don't want to do, I'll just do it. And the thing that I keep in my head is that it's going to have to be done at some stage. So if it's a horrible edit, or if it's filming a piece of A-roll that I can't be bothered with, I just think I've got to do it because at some stage I've got to do it. I might as well just do it now. And for some reason that works for me. That just kind of gives me that motivation and that discipline. Hopefully that helps. Luxury. Just hit 1K on my relatively new YouTube endeavor. Amazing. Congratulations, Luxury. You've still got one of my favorite usernames on here. Brilliant. That 1K, that journey from 0 to 1K feels like a marathon. I'm sure you've had that. I don't know how long it's taken you, but from the sounds of it, it probably hasn't taken you that long. But that's one of the hardest stretches, because once you go over the 1K, it's not plain sailing at all, trust me. But you do at least have that first hurdle done. I don't know how far you've got with your watch hours, but obviously once you get past 4,000 watch hours, you can then turn on the monetization, and away you go. But congratulations, it's a great feeling. Enjoy every milestone and set your own milestones, because now once you've hit 1K, you don't get anything from YouTube. You don't get one of them over there until you've hit 100,000. So you have to set your own milestones in between. It's worth doing that. Rob, is that the scuba band on your Apple Watch Ultra? That's new, isn't it? You bought the watch with the Alpine Loop and later got the Trail Loop. I did. So I went to the Apple store on Fifth Avenue, which is an amazing experience. It's the glass cube thing. I think it's one of the very first Apple stores on Fifth Avenue. And I wasn't going to buy anything actually, but I was walking around and I just saw the yellow Ocean band, and immediately thought, I'm going to have that. I need to buy something from this store, so I'll buy one of those. I've still got the Ted Lasso one, Rob. Don't worry, I do wear that occasionally. But yeah, it's really comfortable actually. Very, very. It's one of the most comfortable watches I've had. All bands I've had. The other thing about it is that it doesn't soak up water. So as much as I love the Trail Loop, the Alpine Loop's not great because it gets very mucky very quickly. But the Trail Loop's great, but it does soak up water. So if you shower with it or go swimming, it's just soggy for ages. This obviously doesn't get soggy, so it very quickly disperses the water. But yeah, love it. I mean, whether or not you like the yellow is personal preference, but it's a good one. Mike, hi Mike. What do you use to capture your screen, as in your Skillshare Final Cut class? Which is great. Thanks. Glad you enjoyed it. Thank you. So I did that very manually, actually. It was literally just the built-in screen recording for Mac OS, whatever it is, Shift, Command 5, whatever it is, and just started recording and then put it all together in post, which is a long way of doing it. There's much better ways, much more much quicker ways of doing it with things like Screencast, and there's lots of different screen recording tools that have all the built-in graphics and things where you can zoom in and isolate areas on the screen that you want people to focus on. But I did it very manually, so I literally just hit the screen record in Mac OS. I still do that for a lot of my other videos where I'm doing screen recording. At some stage, when I have the time, I will invest in something else to make that a bit easier. But the built-in Mac OS one works pretty well, actually. To be fair, I've never really had an issue with it. It's nice, high resolution. Doesn't take the files it creates aren't too big. But yeah, there are definitely better ways of doing it than the way that I do it. So going back to Joe's thing about discipline, my difficulty isn't working, but rather taking on lots of work-related tasks at once, and it can become overwhelming. Yeah, yeah, I thought that might be the case. So it's that thing that I was saying that you think you need to do this and you need to do that, and where do you start? And you start something, then you think, "Oh, I want to do that instead or whatever." I've just noticed that Rob's mentioned the Pomodoro technique. That's a really good idea, actually. That's when you do the timings of this can be your own, but I think generally people either do like 10 or 15-minute really intense periods of work, and then they have a 5-minute break and just do something completely different. Go for a quick walk, go and make a cup of tea, whatever you like, and then come back and do the same thing, and you keep doing it. Like I say, you can do it for longer. You can do it for half an hour. You can do it for an hour, whatever you want. But the idea is that you do. It's a little bit like HIIT, training, where you do very intensive stuff for a period of time, and then you do less intensive stuff, and you do intensive stuff again. It's a little bit like that. I've tried it, and it works pretty well, actually. But I just say, Joe, just focus on one thing. And if you do think you're taking on lots of work tasks, you're probably taking on too many. And I can say this because I've done that, and I still do it occasionally. I still occasionally take on too many things, whether it be saying yes to too many things or setting myself too many things to do. And you can only do so much, particularly if it's just you. If you're freelancing and it's just you, I was a freelancer for a long time, so I know how it is. It's hard, but you do have to just scale back and do the things that are most profitable, that you enjoy the most, and which I suppose are scalable as well. Things that you can do more and more and more of. Hope that helps, Joe. I know exactly how you feel though, because it's not easy. Rob's Rob's given a good example of what the Pomodoro is. No problems, Joe. Glad you like the answer. Any other questions, guys, before we sign off? Are we good? I've enjoyed this today, actually. I've got it after this call. I keep calling these calls like we're on some sort of Zoom call. That's blast from the past for me. After this live stream, I've got to try and work out what's going on with Final Cut Pro. Literally just before I started this live stream, I was importing some footage for that New York Apple Watch video, and Final Cut Pro keeps crashing. So I open the project and it just crashes. So I've been racking my brains partly while I've been doing this live stream, trying to think, how do I get back into that project, because I need to. So that's going to be my next task after this. That's a very good example, actually, going back to Joe's point about being finding it hard to get that discipline. You have to bear in mind that occasionally things will go wrong as well. So I haven't built into today's schedule the need to fix Final Cut Pro. Clearly, I need to do something because it's going to hold me back. If I'd set myself too many tasks today, which possibly I have, something has to give, and that might be what happens, basically. So always think about that. Always think about the unforeseen as well. Andrew's got a question. How much do you worry about what the competitors do? I'm launching a new business and I flip-flop between thinking, why do it if someone else is already doing it? And there is space for everyone. Is there space for everyone? Firstly, I don't see any of my peers within this industry as competitors. It's the first industry I've ever worked in where it doesn't feel like I have competition in a really weird way. And the reason for that is because there are billions of people who use YouTube. And even in my niche, there's many, many, many millions of people who watch tech YouTube videos. So there's enough eyes to go around. People don't just watch one tech creator, they'll watch several generally. So for instance, people like Patrick Rambles, and a few other guys that I know pretty well now through doing this, I don't see any of them as competitors. And in fact, we work together. So we either literally work together on collaborations, videos, or behind the scenes. We're always talking, sharing ideas, sharing experiences with brands for sponsorships. So it's a lovely thing to work in, where rather than having competitors, you have support. And trust me, I spent years in an industry where competition was very fierce, and you spent all of your time thinking about the competitors, watching what they were doing, checking out their websites to see how far ahead they were compared to you. And I spent more time doing that than I did working on the business, and it was exhausting. So it's lovely not to have that. The thing that your point here about why do it if someone is already doing that thing, that's the reason to do it. If you find whatever it is that you want to do for a living, or want to start a business around, if you do some research and find there's lots of people doing it already, that's for a reason, and that's because there is an audience for it. There are customers for it, and there's space for you. There's always space for you because you are just, you're yourself. There's not, you haven't entered that industry yet, and when you do, you'll find customers. If you do the research and no one's doing it, and again, YouTube's a great example of this, where if you come up with an idea for a YouTube channel and think this is brilliant, let's see who's doing it already. You do some searches on Google on YouTube to find similar channels, and you can't find any, or you might find a few, a smattering of tiny channels with 10 or 15 subscribers. Then it's probably not worth doing, because clearly there's no audience for it. People aren't looking for that thing. Same thing with blogging. If you think you found a gap in the market because the blog that you're searching for can't be found, it probably can't be found because there's not anyone wanting to read it. So it's it's a great sign, basically, if lots of people are doing that thing already. And also you can learn from them. That's the best thing. You can watch them, you can kind of work out what you like about what they do and replicate it or change it for yourself. Or if you think they're doing something wrong, then do it right. Do your own version of it. So just go for it, Andrew, basically. ZC plays. How does it feel working with iPad and moving further away from Macs? I'm not really moving further away from Macs, to be honest. And part of the reason for this is because the 15-inch MacBook Air came out of nowhere-ish. So I've had to kind of get stuck into that. And that is something I need to keep reviewing and keep using. So that is still really my workhorse in terms of day-to-day stuff. And then the production workhorse is still the 16-inch MacBook Pro, which is running all this, because Final Cut Pro on the iPad isn't good enough yet. The fact that you can't use external drives to edit from. You can use an external drive, but it copies all the data, all the footage from this onto the iPad. Utterly useless. Until that happens, and until they build in proper audio controls and custom LUTs and things, it's an utter no-go for me. So I still have to use the Mac. But I've got lots of plans with the Mac, with the iPad, particularly with music production. That's something which I can move across to that, and I am doing actively at the moment. But it still needs to develop more. We still need more from Apple in terms of these Pro apps to make them a replacement for Mac OS and for Mac, and for the raw power and flexibility of a Mac, which you still don't quite get from the iPad, unfortunately. Joe, did being on camera get easier over time? It's something I've considered being in professional editing, but never been on camera. It gets a bit easier. I think I've said this before on these live streams, that I found the BRoll, so this stuff, when I'm not this one, but when I'm doing a pre-recorded piece to camera for a review video or whatever, that's got harder over time for some reason. And I think it's because you get more critical about yourself as time goes on. So as your channel grows and you have more you have a bigger audience, there's more expectation. And I think because I'm one of those people, when that happens, I start to really get very, very critical of myself and listen for every nuance and every mispronounced word. And it's turned that process into quite a horrible process sometimes, where I keep re-recording things for no reason. Yeah, I do this. I mean, I've been speaking here for 42 minutes. A lot of it's probably been incomprehensible and a bit weird and jet lagged, but I haven't felt bad about my performance, if that makes sense. Whereas if I sit down in a structured fashion and have a little script or a few bullet points to work from, as soon as I hit record on that camera, it's hard work, and I do lots of different takes. You don't see any of this because all that rubbish is cut out and left on the cutting room floor. But in answer to your question, Joe, it's got harder actually. Although I'm definitely more confident on camera, so I can be a bit sillier on camera, or I can kind of be a little bit more animated and hopefully a bit more interesting than I was at the start. So that gets easier. But for some reason, I've just found I've got more self-critical as time has gone on. That's something that I'm trying to work on. You may not have that issue, but that's me being very honest with this. As a creator, where is the line in terms of fair use when using other people's video content, imagery, or any marketing materials in your videos? What are the limits? I think that the limit with this is if you don't ask for permission to do it. I don't really do this. The only time that I use other footage is from the likes of Apple, really. So if I'm covering WWDC, for instance, I will have clips from WWDC in that video. And all I do is I attribute it at the bottom. It says, courtesy of Apple. You don't technically have to do that, I don't think. Don't take my word for that. Don't take that as read, just in case. But I don't think, I see a lot of videos where people don't do that, but I just do it just in case. It's never caused a problem at all. In terms of using stuff from other people's videos, I've never really done it. The only time I've done it, I think, is if I've referenced Patrick Rambles or whatever. I've asked. I just, although he would never mind, I'll always ask him if he doesn't mind me using it. But yeah, if you're using anything, any content which isn't yours, you can get into a lot of trouble because there's IP around that. There's intellectual property around that. Someone else owns the rights to that. I own the rights to all of my videos. If someone takes my video and shows it somewhere, or modifies it or clips it or whatever, then that's naughty, basically. And it has happened, unfortunately. And YouTube does have tools built in where you can search for kind of reposted content and that sort of stuff, or copyrighted content. So the limit is doing it without permission, basically. But I don't tend to do it very often, really. The questions are flooding in now. Have you got any top tips for shooting B-roll, ideally with only access to one camera? You only need one camera for this, Mark. You don't need any more than one camera for B-roll. So B-roll, keep it as simple as possible. A couple of things to bear in mind: decent lighting. Make sure you've got either very nice natural light, which I've got here actually. It keeps going lighter and darker. That is an issue. You can't control natural light, but so whether it be natural light, which you're fairly confident is going to remain consistent for the shoot, or a big key light that I've got over here. Good lighting is essential. And then it's a question really of style. So most of my B-roll is handheld. You'll notice that it's not perfectly steady. Some of it is. I do some stuff on the tripod, particularly if I'm using a macro lens. I want to get some real detail on products. That really does need a tripod to make it steady. But everything else, if I'm just doing the kind of panning shots and stuff of products, or top-down things where I'm kind of moving the camera around, I just use it handheld. I just quite like the look and feel of that. It just feels a bit more. It just livens up the footage, really. I think rather than just having a straight pan on a perfectly level straight pan on a level. There you go, on a tripod. I like the handheld nature of it, but that's purely personal preference. So yeah, good lighting, your choice of tripod or not tripod, and just make sure things are in focus, which sounds daft, but the number of videos that I've seen where the creator behind it hasn't ensured sharp focus is really annoying. So turn on your focus peaking so you can see when things are in focus, and think about composition, think about framing. If you're focusing on a specific part of a product, make sure it's bang on center in the frame, in focus. And if you need to get some depth of nice blur in the background, bokeh as they call it, zoom in a little bit if you've got a zoom lens, widen the aperture a little bit, and hone in on that thing, but make sure it's the center of frame, and just think about framing. Get the entire product in if you need to. Just have fun with it, really, but don't spend too much time in it unless you really enjoy it. You can buy jibs and sliders and things, and all that stuff looks brilliant. And some of my friends in this industry are very much better than me at that sort of stuff. But I've just found that I'd much rather pick up the camera quickly, stick a memory card and battery in it, and walk around a product handheld. It works for me. Another question about iPads. I do normally say that these questions need to be focused on content creation and stuff, but it's Saturday. Who cares? So another question about iPads. Considering getting the iPad Air 5th Gen, now that it has the M1 chip, do you think there's still major reasons to get the iPad Pro? The iPad Air 5th Gen is brilliant. The only reason to get the iPad Pro really is if you want the better screen, so the ProMotion display, particularly the big one, which has the XDR, the Pro XDR display type stuff, which is quite useful if you're using it for color grading and things like that. Better camera you get on the iPad Pro. There's not much more really. You get the M2 iPad Pro, you get the hover feature with the iPad Pencil with the Apple Pencil. But if you're tempted by the Air, I'd get it. It's a brilliant iPad. Joe, these more casual discussions are always more refreshing to watch. You get to have a more enjoyable conversation with your core viewers. You do, Joe. I love doing these. It's great. I wish all videos could be like this, really, but they can't, obviously, because that wouldn't work. That's why I do these lives. I love doing these lives. Thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Apart from videos, what are some of your other hobbies? Well, when I have time for them, which I don't have a huge amount of time these days. I used to play a lot of piano, which I don't do quite as much now, but I keep trying to get myself back into. Making music has always been a big hobby of mine, which I'm starting to work into this business now, which is quite nice. Cars, I'm in love with my car. I've got a BMW M2, which I'm either washing or driving the short distance from home to the studio. A bit of a geek about cars. F1, I love the F1. That's quite a recent thing for me. I enjoyed it as a kid. I'm one of those kids that used to play F1 on the PlayStation, like do the entire 70 laps on the PlayStation version of the F1 game. But then I kind of fell out of love with it for a bit. But like a lot of people, since Drive to Survive on Netflix, that's really got me back into it. So I'm a big fan of that. And music. I mean, it's Glastonbury weekend, which I've never been to Glastonbury, but it's on my bucket list. Rather. But Glastonbury weekend for me is really important because I love watching it. I love sitting down to see who's headlining and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, football was a huge passion of mine, but I've fallen out of love with it a bit, unfortunately. I think I might get back into it now I've got a son. I think once Harrison's at an age where he can kind of appreciate that stuff, I'll probably will get back into football. But I did kind of just lose interest in it, really, because of all the money and, I don't know, didn't like it. Any questions I've missed, guys? I don't think there are there? No, I think we're good. I'm going to leave it there, guys, because, like I say, lots to do. I've got to have some lunch as well. I'm really hungry, and I just know how much this is annoying Rob in particular, and it's still annoying me. There you go. That's what happens when you set up quickly for these live streams. So thanks for coming on the stream today, guys. If you're watching this in the future as well, thank you for watching it. Give it a thumbs up if you've enjoyed this video. I will be back again next week. And as I mentioned at the start of the video, if you get a chance to check out the Substack newsletter list in the description, I think it's worth a look, because every Friday I send out written newsletters about this industry, and people seem to like it. So check it out. You can unsubscribe whenever you want to. And also, if you haven't subscribed yet to this channel, please do. Loads of stuff on the way on here, apart from these live streams. I've got more podcast interviews on the way, more regular videos as well. So yeah, it's good stuff. Just one other question someone's asked: are you looking to collaborate with more creators in the future? Yes, I am. Lots of other collaborations they're not planned, but they are being talked about. So yeah, lots on the way. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. Have a wonderful Saturday, and I'll catch you hopefully in the next live stream. Take care. Cheers.